when we started, we were all in college.
Mhm.
We were coming up with the concept of Bacon Man as we were leaving our senior year, and we had absolutely no idea what we were doing.
To start off, could you introduce yourself and then give us the convention pitch
Sure.
for Bacon Man?
So I'm Neal Laurenza. I'm the managing director at Skymap Games, a team of 4 people, and I work on the game Bacon Man, an adventure. Bacon Man is the rightful heir to the meat throne until his grandfather, Old King Roast Beef, is brutally murdered under very mysterious circumstances. And now Bacon Man has to fight through the food groups and defeat all of the fruits and vegetables and other uh, delicious goodies in order to take back his place as king of the meat zone.
Cool. We've covered Bacon Man since the Boston Fig.
Hmm.
I think that was 2014 that I saw it for the first time.
That's right.
So we've been seeing you guys develop, and in this interview, I specifically wanted to focus on one thing that I saw at PAX for the first time that I thought was really interesting, which is your multiplayer mode.
Sure.
Specifically, I'd like to talk about the fact that it's asymmetrical. I'm not sure that's exactly the right term, but what I mean by that is the different heroes have different stats.
Sure.
And how you came to the decision to implement multiplayer in that way, and the design challenges in doing so.
Hmm. Sure. So Bacon Man has, at the moment, 3 working characters, and 2 of those. Well, actually, I'll talk about 3 of those. 3 characters, but there's another one that we'll be adding, so there'll be 4 total by the time that we're finished. We made a decision to do couch co-op. Online multiplayer was something we were considering, but it's much more fun to like turn and punch your friend. So we wanted to stick with that and kind of go with the old school experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's really interesting when you're designing multiplayer for um, different player types. There are a lot of people that when they play a game, they get used to a character that's a very specific way, and then that really, for us, kind of dulls the game. We want it to be so that when everybody plays, they have options to create a new experience and have it be a fresh experience. So there's a couple of ways that we did that. The first is you can modify your characters using things like standard power-ups. You can change either your the number of hits that you can take or the amount of damage that you do. The second way that we do it is through something called orbs. Orbs are what actually modify your player stats. So you could, for example, have infinite ammo but not be able to punch anymore, or you could have higher power but half your hit points or something like that.
Mm.
There's a tons of different orbs in this game, and then the final way is, of course, exactly what we were talking about, which is having completely different characters with different stats. So depending on the way that you want to play the game depends on the kind of character that you're going to pick. So online multiplayer is tricky because not only are we dealing with characters that have very different statistics, but also the way that they traverse levels is different. So, for example, one of my favorite characters, Lardlass, she has the ability to like do this kind of dive kick, which is really powerful. But it also means that she can't traverse areas quite as easily as Bacon Man, who can use his gun to gun jump up to higher ledges. So the way that we have the game set up is there are parts of the game that you can only reach with certain characters, and you will only get certain items for those characters if you play as them. So if you want to play the whole game through in co-op, you can still get every item. You can still get everything, but you have to be aware that you need to make sure that like you know where the items are beforehand. So there's some amount of replay value that comes out of that, I think.
Cool. Yeah, I thought it was really cool that it's not something I've seen very often recently, is having these different characters that have different abilities. You know, somebody's a little more powerful, somebody's got more health. It's cool. And was that something you started with? Did you know you wanted to go that route in multiplayer from the beginning, or was that something you kind of came to as you went through the development process?
Yeah, pretty early on we wanted to do that. Each of the characters takes it. Bacon Man's the only really well-rounded character. uh, he maybe physically, but not mentally. He's not mentally well-rounded. But if you look at like Bacon Man, he has kind of standard strength and standard health, and then you've got Lardlass, who has she's a tank. She can take a lot of damage, but she doesn't do a lot of damage.
Mm.
And then you have Feta, who's like a feta cheese samurai, and he can do a lot of damage, but he's very very squishy.
Mm.
When you're playing as those characters, especially in online multiplayer, well, not online multiplayer, rather in multiplayer, you have to take into consideration like, yeah, you know what? If I have someone who's playing as Lardlass and with someone who's playing as Feta, that opens up a whole realm of possibilities for how you're going to play against a boss fight, for example.
Mm.
Does Lardlass stand up in the front and like take more hits while the other player is trying to deal damage? Do you have one person act as a distraction or not, or blah blah blah? And there's a lot of situations in the game that we had to think of these things when we were building fights, and that does take a lot of extra work, but it's what we've wanted, really, like you mentioned, since the beginning. We've known we wanted to do multiplayer, so that was kind of our goal.
Cool. So moving from the focus of multiplayer to kind of the biggest news that you guys are really very close to launch, to release.
Yeah.
And there was recently a big move in your scheduled release date. Do you want to kind of touch on that a little bit?
Sure. We're of the opinion that I think it was Miyamoto who mentioned it a long time ago, and probably he said it best, is that a bad game is probably going to be bad forever if you don't take the time that you need in order to make all of the systems and the core mechanics the way that you want. That's hard to patch. You can always patch bugs. You can always fix collision in a level or something like that, but it has to be just right. And we were at a point where we were like late last year, we said, okay, you know what? I think like early 2016 we can release this. And then we started playing through, and we were like, yeah, you know what? This isn't really exactly what we were looking for. There's still polish here that we want to add. There's more levels that we want to make, and it came down to like, what kind of studio do we really want to be? Do we want to be people who are just like putting in a game because we think that, yeah, you know what? Okay, great, it's done, ship it, blah blah blah. Or do we really want to put out something that we feel is truly awesome? And that was kind of where the debate came down to. And for us, it's a no-brainer. Like, if it takes us an extra, 6 months, even longer, whatever, it will do it, because our bread and butter, the way that we survive as a studio is we're contract workers.
Right.
We help other people make their games, so for us to delay, it doesn't mean that we're gonna our studio is gonna fold. It just means that we have to have additional careful planning, in that we make sure we know what we want to execute on before we make the decision. But we never, the only money that we're quote unquote losing when we don't release a game is the money that maybe we would have received earlier. But why would we care about that if we have to make if we make a game that we're not proud of? Right. It has to be just right. So our goal now is we're gonna try to release for like late summer, early fall. We don't have an exact release date set, but the game already has probably somewhere around 15 hours of gameplay, give or take. So it's pretty big. We're getting really close.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to hear that stance of your development company, because one of the things that's attracted me to Bakeman, since seeing it in 2014, was the clear passion you guys have for making this game what you want. And it's a very unique vision. There's no other game out there right now like Bakeman. No food-based co-op, couch adventure. But it's good to hear that that's the mindset you guys are taking, that you want to make a product you can be proud of rather than one you get out the door.
Yeah, and I think it's tricky because for indie developers, especially if you have a publisher or if you have some kind of external funding, that you're really worried about making the best game that you can within a certain time limit, because once that money's out, you're screwed. Right. Then you have to release wherever you're at, or you have to find additional funding, and that's a whole other set of issues. Like Skymap, our company is entirely member owned. Everybody has equal share. We share the responsibility of almost everything involved in the company, and we're not beholden to anyone. We don't have to worry about someone saying, okay, here's how much money you have, good luck, and pushing us out the door. That being said, maybe someday we'll have a publisher relationship or something like that, but it's ones that we would pick really carefully. Like, we want to be able to have control of our own projects and work on them in a way that we feel fits us. So
Yeah, absolutely. So being close to release, um, I like to ask devs that have reached that point what the whole process looks like from the end of it. You know what looking back where you started. I mean that's a huge loaded question, but looking back at where you started, what are some of the things that you um, see as things that were really good decisions, really bad decisions,
yeah.
things you would change the way you do stuff, just how it feels to be this close to the end of the project.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a tough one. Like when we started, we were all in college.
Mm-hmm.
We were coming up with the concept of Bacon Man as we were leaving our senior year, and we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. So I think that the biggest challenge for us was you don't know what you don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're first getting into any kind of entrepreneurial endeavor, independent game making in particular, there is so much that you just have no idea what you're going to tackle, and the ability to be really flexible is probably the most important. We thought coming out of school that making games is like a very specific way, and there was a process that had to be followed. Nobody ever really knows what they're doing. That's the biggest thing I figured out. Like like the
Ain't
people
that
that
life?
yeah, it's crazy. No one knows anything ever, right? and and so that especially was true for our experience like making video games. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just kind of decided this is what we wanted to try and go out and make, and it evolved over time. If I could, upon reflection, if I like something I would have done differently, probably would have been um, working with the team more to come up with more effective strategies for deciding what final mechanics were going to feel like on paper, because so much of it was we thought that things were going to play a certain way in our heads, and we didn't try to solidify a lot of that early on. So when we would go to program a feature, um, it would feel a lot different than what someone who was designing, for example, had imagined, and then we'd have to go through this process of tuning over and over and over and over again to the point where it was really annoying. Go figure. So I think that was something I think we've done really well is we have been pretty flexible. We allow each other to make mistakes, which is really important. Everyone in the company owns a certain area.
Mm-hmm.
So Angelos, everyone has their hands in design, but Angelos owns design. Everyone has their hands in business, but I own business, et cetera, et cetera. So there are times when someone says, I really feel this is the right way to do things. I know you guys disagree, but I need to be able to take a try at this. They try it, and if it succeeds, then great. They were right, and that's awesome. But if it fails, no one's going to give them any shit over it, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
We let each other try things and fail a little bit because it's the only way that you can really grow.
Right, that's true.
So I think that's something we've done really well is we've allowed each other to fail, as weird as that sounds.
No, I mean that's how you learn stuff. Is those missteps? You learn what not to do is sometimes as important as learning what to do.
Yeah, I think it's probably more important. If I think about the things that we've messed up on, they've taught us more than the times that we've done something really right. As weird as that sounds.
No, it
So
makes sense. So moving from development to the other side that we like to cover, which is the people.
sure.
So what is your story of getting into indie development? What made you choose this path, and what was your process of getting involved?
So if you want to go as early back as humanly possible, for me, as
Back to the
far back as I can, back to the
beginning.
beginnings. Uh, I had to have been, I don't know, maybe 5 years old, and I would come downstairs and see my mother playing Sega Genesis really late at night. Like she was addicted to video games, and I couldn't help but think like, even as a little kid, this is something really interesting that adults would be so infatuated with this that they would think that this is so much fun that they would be up until late at night playing. And I would play a lot of Genesis as a kid. So in my early teens, I did late sorry rather preteens. I did I played a lot of Half Life,
Hmm.
and what I started to discover was like people online were cheating, and they were doing all sorts of things. And I was like, wow, I wonder how they do that. How can I do that, right? So, so I was starting to figure out, how do I cheat in online video games? That was how I started getting into game development. And it started with like finding out people online were doing script kiddie kind of stuff, writing little scripts to make themselves more powerful in the game. So I would start to figure out like how those worked, and I would then go, oh, if I wonder if this program lets me, shoot through walls or something, I wonder if I can like change the way the characters look, and then I started doing that, and blah blah blah. And the same went on until like Xbox. I was really into Xbox modding, so I would take apart my Xbox and change the files on games like Halo, and that was something that was big for me. And then as I got older, I started getting more into like online games and talking to people over the internet. So I worked on a game called The Specialist Roleplay, which was kind of like Gary's Mod Roleplay is what's very popular now. That kind of stemmed off from that game. And what we really did was we took a shooting game and turned it into a project with like a fully working in-game economy and items and all sorts of things. And then I decided I would try and go to college for this. And I went to Southern New Hampshire University for game design. And at the time, the school was really bad for video game development. It was like the worst place that I could have been for making games. But actually, because of that, it was exactly where I needed to be, because I found all of these people who were like, we're not learning what we need to learn in class. Let's go learn it on our own. And those were the people that eventually would become Skymap Games.
Right.
So if I hadn't had like a tough time at school not getting the content, I wouldn't have met the people that I co-founded Skymap with. And go figure, now I actually teach their adjunct, so I'm there between 1 and 3 classes a semester, and the guy who runs it now, Ed Brilliant, he's like amazing. He's done an incredible job of completely switching the program around, and I would say now arguably it's one of the better game design programs in the Northeast. So go figure. But yeah, and then from there, college, made lots of little games, and eventually went on to graduate, started doing contract development and working on Bacon Man.
Awesome. So you mentioned a couple of games that informed, your love of video games and development. But what other games are you playing these days? I mean, every time we ask this of devs, there's always, of course, the my own game, the one I'm trying to get out.
Right.
But I like to know what people are playing.
Sure. So I lately have been playing CounterStrike Go, and I still years and years later continue to play Luminous for the PlayStation. I'm playing for the PlayStation Vita right now, but I used to play them on the PSP. Those are the two games I've been playing a lot lately. I'm kind of weird. A lot of people get really excited for all these new games that are coming out, and I wish I could get as excited as I used to about new games. I very rarely do. I like to try games like at a friend's house, for example, and if something really captures me about it, then I'll go and play it. But mostly I like to play a lot of games that involve some really high skill arc, that you're working really hard to get as good as you possibly can at that game.
Sure.
And Counter-Strike and Luminous really fit that for me right now.
Absolutely. That's cool. So kind of wrapping things up, what are there any other indie developers out there that you think are doing something really cool, either mechanically, development-wise, visually, that you think it's worth people checking out?
Yeah, most definitely. So the one right off the bat, Chuck Carter at Eager Games, that he's obviously working on Zed, and Zed looks like, I grew up playing Myst, so Zed looks nuts.
It has really, really, really great potential.
It's got incredible potential. I'm super excited for that game, so my fingers are crossed. I know Chuck's going to do a great job with it. And then the other is Mushba is making Burrito Galaxy. Burrito Galaxy, if you haven't heard of it, is the most bizarre. It's another food-based game.
I was gonna say, if you got a thing for food-based games,
I do. I have a thing for food games. They're great. They're super good. Yeah, Mushba and for the Burrito Galaxy team, definitely would check out Burrito Galaxy. And that game's different. It's a first-person adventure game, and and it's got a really great sense of humor and incredible visuals, great aesthetic to it. Soundtrack is just like top notch. So that game looks awesome. I also think that one of the companies in my co-working space where I work out of, called Robot Loves Kitty, they're working on a game called Upsilon Circuit, which is only 8 people in the world are ever playing the game at the same time, and everybody else in the world is watching them and like Hunger Games style sending items into the game to help the players that they like. And that's a really innovative game. I mean, no one's ever done anything like that before, so I'm really excited.
I've heard about and read a lot about Upsilon Circuit. Yeah, that sense of community that it's gonna kind of necessitate is really interesting, and in the Twitch age, seems like a good move on their part.
It's a totally new. It's a new time to be making projects. Like who would have thought 3, 4 years ago that people would be making video games for other people to be watching and participating with. It's totally like such a strange
brave new world.
Yeah, totally it is and super fascinating. So well, I would invite you too anytime you want to come over and hang out at the Game Assembly in Manchester, New Hampshire, Jacob. Anytime.
I'd love to. I'd love to swing down there. Maybe before the Boston Fig, I'll make a road trip of it.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, Neal, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about Bacon Man and the development process. We'll keep people informed of release date and check back here for more.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.